The first one is alignment of incentives, right? So this co-ownership mentality means that the ownie living in the home, and we've seen this in the first year where we had homes in the portfolio, the ownies treat homes much differently than a traditional tenant would, right? So they fix things, they really treat the properties like they own them, which they do fractionally. And so what that means for the investor is that you're effectively paying a lot less in maintenance. And we asked this question early on and said, well, what would you do if you and your brother or your sister, right, or your best friend bought a house together, and you lived in it, and your partner, who you trust really well, was the silent partner? How would you structure this? We said you would probably ask for rent, right, on the half that you don't that you own but don't live in. So what we're doing here is structurally very similar, only we're doing it at scale, and we're doing it across potentially hundreds of investors and hundreds of ownies in individual assets. So the ownie lives in it, pays rent on the fraction that they don't own. The more they buy, the bigger their stack of bricks, the less they have to pay in rent. So what this does, it actually creates a couple of really interesting things. The first one is alignment of incentives, right? So this co-ownership mentality means that the ownie living in the home, and we've seen this in the first year where we had homes in the portfolio, the ownies treat homes much differently than a traditional tenant would, right? So they fix things, they really treat the properties like they own them, which they do fractionally. And so what that means for the investor is that you're effectively paying a lot less in maintenance, right? Which increases the yield and the return on that investment. So you have this co-ownership mentality, and the alignment around someone living in the home and owning a fraction of it treats it very differently than someone who's just a tenant. That was one thing. The second thing that we saw was, because there's a lot of demand, we can be very selective. So the portfolio so far has an average FICO of 740, right? Average payment to income of somewhere around 32%. So these are very highly qualified buyers. And when you dig in and you look at, well, who are those folks? Who are the people that are jumping on this program? They are what I would call the missing middle, right? They're folks who are in creative jobs, they're nurses, they're teachers, public sector workers, right? Folks with college degrees, they have good jobs, they make a good amount of money, but they're not wealthy, and they haven't had enough time to save the down payment. So really what we're doing is we're allowing them to jump that hurdle into real estate ownership. Because of the way the program is structured, you also have this interesting dynamic where, if you look at it as an SFR investor, as a single family rental investor, right, you don't have lease up costs because we don't buy a home until we actually have the ownie contractually committed. So they pay rent from day one. We've had also 0% vacancy, and because of the quality of the portfolio, we've had zero late pays. And so all of that ultimately comes together to increasing the yield on the investor side to somewhere around 300 basis points above the average for SFR investments out there. And that's an attractive value prop to investors, which is why we started the fund to say, Ownify Home Fund sources capital at market and above market rate in an asset class that people understand and like. And at the same time, we're solving this societal problem, right? Ideally in local communities where lots of homes are being bought up by private equity and investors, and they're not available for purchase, right, for owner-occupied individuals. And so what we've done is kind of created this hybrid, right, alternative path to ownership that solves both problems, right? On the one side, get access for investors to local single-family homes as an investment opportunity. On the other side, solve that on-ramp problem.